So we use the preterite and imperfect pretty much. There's other tenses. We'll learn those next spring. But when we tell a story in the past, which from a communicative perspective, we're always telling stories. We're always telling our friends or family or whoever what happened last weekend. Or like how'd that test go. We're always narrating in the past. When we come back on Wednesday, what'd you do for fall break? We're always talking about the past. So this is a really, really, really important skill to learn and hopefully polish someday. To be able to speak Spanish, to be able to understand what people are talking about, and also be able to articulate. Narrating in the past, using the preterite and the imperfect. So we're not going to take time to do this just because, but ¿qué hiciste ayer is asking what? Just to reiterate, going back to basics, chapter 9, August. ¿Qué hiciste ayer? I'm asking you what? What did you do yesterday? And if you were to respond to this, you would tell me 3 specific activities that you did yesterday. Ayer por la mañana trabajé, por la tarde fui a mi casa, por la noche tuve que corregir unos exámenes. Trabajé, fui, tuve. Pretérito, pretérito, pretérito. Okay? Specific because why? Why are these actions specific? Because I'm referring to when? Yesterday. So distinct, so specific. I even state what time of day. Okay? Versus what we learned in chapter 10. ¿Qué hacías de niño? I'm not talking about yesterday. What am I talking about? As a child. Like your entire childhood? That is not a very specific, it's a specific time in your life, but that's a big, 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 big span of life. Okay? And when we talked about this, we didn't talk about one-time activities completed in the past. When I say iba a la casa de mis abuelos versus fui a la casa de mis abuelos, when you hear iba, you know that I went one time or repeated times? Repeated times. Yes, many times. This action, iba, is indicating more than once. Fui is just once. Fui a la playa. Fui a la casa de mis abuelos. Okay? But iba a la casa indicates habitual, repeated. That's really the fundamental difference. Preterite's one time. Imperfect is repeated, habitual time. So comía muchos dulces isn't just one time, generally speaking. Jugaba al fútbol, generally speaking. So sometimes people say, I used to ia. Just that little rhyme. I used to ia. Because imperfect is used to. Aba, AR verbs, ia. ER, IR verbs. Imperfect. Okay? So preterite, just to clarify, it's so important that you comprehend these things separately right now, how they're used, before we put them together. So is everybody clear on the preterite? Specific actions completed one time in the past. Okay? And you can put this on your chart on the back side of this paper. Some of you already are. Muy bien. Acciones específicas, or in English, specific actions. One time. Okay? Completed one time in the past. They have a clear beginning and end. We know when that action started. We know when that action ended. Either because there's a reference of time, like 20 minutes. The test was 20 minutes long. Fue 20 minutos. El examen fue 20 minutos. Or, like, recibí mi licencia de conducir, even though we don't have, like, a specific time, like, on a timeline, we know just because verbs like empezar, terminar, recibir, some verbs are just so logical, like, I got my driver's license. We know that that's, like, typically a one-time action. It's understood. Imperfect, repeated, habitual, some sort of description, like it was a dark and stormy night. That would be imperfect. Okay? See.
So why in...
I'll get to that.
Okay.
Hold up. It's the same question, right? As before with Tania. I'll get to it. I know. And I'm glad you're thinking about that. And I will help you figure that out. So, today we had licencia de conducir. And I'm going to give you an example. Lots of examples today. Using the preterite and imperfect. However, unlike the book, okay? This is why I don't ever use a book. The book's like roll, grammar, which is great, but it's not meaningful. We're talking about something that you did in your life, and we can apply the grammar to prior knowledge that you already have, and it'll make more sense. Plus, the more examples you have, the more, this is why I speak Spanish in class. The more Spanish I speak, the more you hear it, the more you're going to absorb it and ultimately be able to produce it. That's how language learning works. That's why kids don't start, you don't have a baby and they're like, hey mom, how's it going? That was crazy. They hear language for 3 years almost before they can start saying anything. Think about it. Think about your minds. You're just 2 years in, not even. So you need all these examples first. That's why the story is so long. And then you can reference these examples when you're doing your supersite homework. And then you can reflect on this when you're applying new concepts, new storytelling in the past, on the test, and the final exam. So we're going to focus on the meaning. All right, so we already talked about this, and I just rewrote it a little bit differently. Cuando tenía 16 años, recibí mi licencia de conducir. Durante toda mi adolescencia, quería conducir. So first, let's focus on the meaning, then we'll identify the grammar. What is it saying? And you can apply this probably to your life. This is kind of universal among adolescents. What's this saying? Quería conducir. Wanted to drive. Okay, so throughout my entire adolescence, which was probably the same for y'all, was everybody kind of eager to get their driver's license? Most of us are. That's pretty unanimous in our culture. Quería. So now let's talk about the grammar. We're going to identify preterite or imperfect. Quería, preterite or imperfect? Imperfect. First of all, how do you know? What can you tell about the conjugation? Ia, right? Ia is imperfect. So you might want to label these in the story. You can do IRP. You don't have to do IMP. You just do the letter I or the letter P. Or if you have more than one highlighter, consider color coding. What? Do you have that example? It should be. Toda. Yeah, sorry. There might be a couple variations. So why do you think this is imperfect? I wanted to drive.
Because we're talking about like an extended period of time that wasn't a defined moment.
Yes, exactly. So remember, imperfect is repeated, habitual, ongoing. Preterite's like one time, okay? Also, wanting, like wanting something, whenever we want to express wanting, we're going to use quería. Like, ugh, no quería estudiar. In general, because wants, it's hard to tell the beginning and end of that action. So we usually express wanting in Spanish with quería. Just note that. Also, querer is a verb that changes meaning in the preterite. It has nothing to do with want in the preterite, remember? Quiso, for example, or like no quise. No quise means refuse, and quise means to try, or tried. So it has a totally different meaning in the preterite anyway. So most of the time we're expressing wanting, like tried or refused is so specific anyway. I very rarely use that in speaking Spanish. Usually we express wants in the past. So like, when in doubt, probably go with quería over quiso or quise. Most likely, because that's so specific to the context versus quería is more general. Pregunta?
See, so this is, if you're, because the way you said no quería estudiar, that sounded like
it could refer to last night, right?
Yeah, like or
if
even,
that, yes. And so that's I know when I said that I was like, this might throw them off a little bit. It does. Imperfect can be yesterday.
Okay.
The ongoing action, it doesn't have to only be restricted to childhood or like las etapas de vida, like adolescencia, because you're going to see a lot today and examples on the super site that the imperfect can be used to refer to yesterday as well. If I said ayer anoche no quería estudiar, that is grammatically correct because I'm emphasizing the ongoing lack of interest in studying, lack of motivation to study.
But you still use like if you say,
I'll still use imperfect even if I used ayer.
But no, like if you're saying like today I don't want to study, you would use the present.
Yeah,
tense.
quiero. No quiero estudiar.
Okay.
Sí, sí, sí. Ok. Yo practicaba manejar todos los días. What's this idea expressing? What did I do?
You practice
Practice driving
every day.
every day. That's a context clue. And you might want to put that on your imperfect chart. Or you could just put on your imperfect chart, I think it's page 266, todos los días. A menudo. Those context clues, let me just confirm that. What page that is? I think it's 266. Yeah, 266. Muchas veces, pocas veces, con frecuencia, de vez en cuando. Page 66, you could put on your chart under imperfect, because all of those adverbs or expressions indicate repeated habitual actions, okay? When you hear practicaba, you know I went into that driver's test with lots of time practicing driving, right? Versus like practiqué, you'd be like, whoa, you really didn't prepare, you know? Okay, so todos los días, todos los veranos, a menudo, de vez en cuando. Okay? So, aber imperfect. Antes de tomar el examen, yo estaba lista y un poco nerviosa. So, antes de tomar el examen es muy importante. What's that saying? Before. Prior to taking the test, right? Prior to taking the test, I what?
Was ready.
I was ready, but nervous. So why would this be in the imperfect? Does anybody know why? Sorry, I didn't even ask you imperfect or preterite. Estaba's imperfect, so you want to label that. I need to make sure I have you identify the conjugation, because some people can't even recognize the difference between a verb conjugated and the preterite and the imperfect, which is fundamental. So why would this be imperfect? Pregunta?
No.
Okay, answer. Perfecto. Uh-huh.
Because it has aba, so that
Aba's
indicates
imperfect.
that it's imperfect, but it also could apply to every exam.
Yeah, or even though it's this particular exam, you're on the right track. Anna?
Because you're not just nervous for like a second.
Right. This is ongoing. This is leading up. This is how I was feeling leading up to that particular test. So feelings, not always, nothing's really 100% of the time besides age, but feelings are typically imperfect, leading up to something, how you feel. So, estaba. Okay, otro ejemplo. I'm trying to make this as black and white and concrete as possible. If you major in Spanish or if you go on to speak Spanish, you'll learn more about this. But these are the general rules. Hacía sol, no llovía, era un día bonito, tiempo perfecto para conducir. So what am I describing here?
The weather, like
The weather, right? Llovía, hacía, era. So what tense am I using to describe the weather? Preterite or imperfect? All these verbs are in the imperfect, okay? Weather. Unless it's a tornado or a hurricane or an earthquake or something, when you see hacía plus a weather description, anything that has to do with the weather, you're going to use the imperfect on the supersite, unless it's like a natural disaster. Okay, or a sudden like bolt of lightning or a crash of thunder. You would use a preterite for those because why? Why would you use the preterite for an earthquake? Why would you use the preterite for when Dorian hit?
because that is a specific.
Because it's so specific. It's one time. It's completed. You're not just saying like, even if you're describing the weather yesterday, you're going to use the imperfect because weather is ongoing. Okay? Descriptions are typically imperfect. Okay. This is another tricky one, Marina. I know you're going to be like, what? Because you already know this, the age thing. Eran las 4 de la tarde cuando el examen empezó. I've got two verbs here. What tense are they in? What's eran? Preterite or imperfect? Imperfect. But empezó is what? Preterite. Okay, so Marina was noticing this earlier, and here's another example where we have both tenses in one sentence. Is there anything about this sentence, word order, hint, tense, and tenses versus our original response? Yo tenía 16 años cuando recibí mi licencia de conducir.
It's the same order.
It's the same order. Exactly, Anna. It's the same order. What do we have? What does she mean, same order? What do we have first? What tense? Imperfect, and then we have preterite. What else is similar in this sentence versus that first one?
Well, like age and time are kind of like similar because they're both like
Talking about specific.
Yeah, I know.
time is like a unit. Sorry, but
Yeah.
weird. But and then impeso is like because it's talking about the exam. That's specific.
Started. Right. So started and received are definitely preterite one-time actions.
That means starting.
Empezó means started. Yeah. Okay. Is there any word in the sentence, possibly between the imperfect tense and the preterite tense, that you see in this sentence that you saw in the other sentence? Cuando. Okay, this is not linguistic classification that's accepted professionally among Spanish-speaking or Spanish teachers. But this is what I call a cuando sandwich, basically. Imperfect, cuando, preterite. Okay? Why? Because cuando means what? When. Okay? Listen carefully. And you can note this on your papers, and that's why I have this set up like this. When we have the imperfect is kind of like, if I had to illustrate the imperfect with like a symbol, I would do like a squiggly line with arrows like that. Because it's kind of like used to say it's an ongoing action, no clear beginning and end. The preterite, though, I would use like an X on a timeline to be like, boom, that happened, okay? Cuando means when, so a lot of times the cuando sandwich, whatever classification applies to your answers on the supersite and on the test, because this states what was going on when something happened. Cuando interrupts. And when there's an action in progress, that squiggly line, that's the imperfect. Like, I was sleeping, or she was studying. This is the ongoing action, the imperfect, what was going on. When the fire alarm went off, when my roommate came home, when class ended, okay? So cuando interrupts the action, and usually the action after that's a preterite. Whatever, like I was walking down the street when I tripped and fell. See?
So numero uno on the front page.
Yeah, they.
It's the same sentence, but like a different structure.
Okay, yeah.
Cuando in the
Yes.
beginning.
Okay, let me just add one quick thing, and then I'm going to talk about that. And I'm glad you pointed that out, because we can vary our word order in English and Spanish. So the imperfect, like this, when the action's in progress, is kind of expressing the idea of ing in English. Was sleeping, was walking, were listening. Whenever we want to express that idea, even if it was yesterday or like 5 minutes ago, we use the imperfect. What were you going to say? Iba. Okay? Ibas a decir. Actions in progress, imperfect. And preterite's like simple past tense, usually ed, but it doesn't always translate that way. Okay, so this is a cuando sandwich, my fancy term. But Margarita pointed out, wait a second, on the paper, in our handout, it says, Cuando tenía 16 años, yo recibí mi licencia de conducir. So sometimes you don't feel like a sandwich, you want to go with a low carb option and you get a wrap. So this is like the cuando wrap. We can rearrange the order of our ideas, but it's still following the same principles. It's still following cuando, interrupting the action. Like, yo recibí mi licencia de, or cuando tenía 16 años, Yo recibí mi licencia de conducir. If you're like, wait, I see cuando, and there's two blanks, this is like the superset or something, then you really got to think about what's being said. Could I say it like this in English? Because this translates very nicely into English, okay? So you really have to identify the vocabulary, and usually students who are really good at vocab, they're like walking diccionarios. Like some people are really good at vocab, some people are really good at grammar. My students that have a really good grasp of vocab don't struggle too much with the preterite and imperfect because they're able to decode what the sentence is saying and think about it. So what you want to do is think about, even if you're not good at vocab, you can still identify what's this saying. Can I rearrange the word order? If I could, then it's a quando wrap and not a quando sandwich, okay? There's a supersite activity where it's like all quando sandwiches. And if you see, blank, da-da-da-da-da, quando, blank, it's imperfect quando preterite, imperfect quando preterite, okay? Another supersite activity, it's not on the test, I'm going to just put it further down, is you've got a quando sandwich, which is imperfect quando preterite, but if you see the word mientras on the supersite, again, this isn't on the test or the final exam, but I'm pretty sure it's on the supersite. If you have a blank before mientras and after mientras, both of those verbs are going to be in the imperfect because mientras means while. Like, I was taking notes while she was talking. Anytime you interpret something as ing in the past tense, it's imperfect. That's what you're conveying. So mientras is another one. Okay. So that's why, Marina, to go back what you've been noticing, age is pretty specific. Time. This is telling what time it is. That's like to the minute. Couldn't be any more specific, but yet we're using imperfect. That's because of the word order with quando. But also, it doesn't have to be limited to quando. These are exceptions to the whole specific thing with preterite. Age is always imperfect. Age is always tenía, and clock on the wall time. Eran las 4. If you see the verb ser in parentheses and you have a number, just like if you see the verb tener in parentheses and you have an age, it's going to be eran. So I'm going to say clock time because time could be interpreted different ways, but I'm talking about like clock on the wall. Margarita?
Can you generalize and say that every time quando is used, it's always going to be in the order of imperfect and then preterite?
If quando's in the middle, yeah, you could say, definitely for a 201 and through 202. You can say it's pretty much always imperfect quando preterite.
Okay, will imperfect always be before the preterite?
With quando, when quando separates the actions, yeah,
Okay.
it is. So that's something you can rely on.